When most people think of prisons, they think of someplace they're happy not to be. But not everyone. While we often hear of inmates trying to break out of jail to freedom, there are also some who try to break in for any of several reasons. Depending on their unique circumstances, they face different consequences for their actions. Let's find out what these could be in this episode of the Infographic Show. What happens if you break into prison? First of all, just what happens to you if you either attempt to or successfully break into a prison largely depends on who you are, your motivations, and what you did if you were lucky enough to make it in. Applicable laws may vary by state, not to mention by country. To find out what these consequences could be, let's look at some of the unlucky who have attempted to navigate a jail's defenses only to be caught and, in most cases, charged and sentenced. Sylvester Giles, for example, had formerly served time for manslaughter but was released from a Florida jail in 2009. He lasted 3 days in the great wide open before apparently missing the feeling of being boxed in. He first approached guards with a simple request to let him back inside. They obviously refused, after which he attempted to climb over the jail's walls. He may or may not have noticed the barbed wire on top before his climb, but it's safe to say he was well aware of it after. He got stuck in it and was caught. Because he was out on probation, in this instance he was in violation of his probation conditions and was sentenced to 15 more years in prison. While most would find this terrible news, we're sure he was quite oddly thrilled. Then there's Martin Ussery, who, like Sylvester Giles, apparently didn't like being free. Though instead of lasting 3 days outside bars, at least he made it to 3 years. After being paroled from Folsom Prison in California in 2008, he was found in the grass outside the facility in 2011. His location was given away due to handy thermal technology, which zeroed in on him as he climbed a fence. In this crazy world of crazies, we can almost believe his claims that he was just there to reminisce about his previous stay. However, it's much more likely that he was there in an attempt to smuggle in contraband instead. Unsurprisingly, he was charged and his bail was set at an impressive $1 million. Let's hope for his sake that any cash he made in his efforts to sneak things in amounted to anything close to that amount. In the case of Monique Armstrong, who was not out on parole, what she lacked in criminal history she made up for with limitless stupidity. Believe it or not, she actually called the police before attempting to gain unauthorized entry into a Colorado facility. She was able to navigate a chain fence and was trying to break windows to a building when she was spotted. All this was an attempt to get access to her 18-year-old brother, who was not even in that area of the property. She asked to be arrested, and those in charge were all too happy to oblige. This behavior earned her charges of criminal trespass and criminal mischief. Her brother, on the other hand, who'd she'd gotten into all this mess in order to see, walked out just hours later on bond. We're guessing he had better sense and didn't break back in to see his silly sister, though that would make a great story. Then there were those willing to put their freedom on the line for friends and family. Patrick Rempe of Florida, for instance, was arrested after he got tangled in the wire of a prison fence, though it was almost certain he'd been caught regardless. If you're curious why, we'll tell you. You see, before he started to climb the fence, he'd announced his presence by driving his car into the prison's front door. It seems that Rempe was high at the time on a drug known as flakka and just wanted to visit his buddies. This was somewhat of a problem, however, since they were prison inmates. He decided to pop in nonetheless, though he really didn't think it through as he couldn't navigate even one fence and the prison had two. Beyond these, there was also the issue of a locked door. Now, what does driving high, crashing your car into a jail, scaling its fence, and fighting back when you get caught get you? 3 felonies for criminal mischief, driving under the influence, and leaving the scene of a crash with property damage. Not to mention aggravated assault and battery on a law enforcement officer. In other words, it was really not pretty. Facing these charges, he was held without bond, but fortunately for him, this meant lots of opportunity to catch up with those friends. There seem to be fewer charges involved for those who attempt to bust into jail while intoxicated when they don't first crash their cars, destroy prison ground property, or fight the police. Tiffany Hurd, for example, faced only 1 charge in the case of drunkenly attempting to enter the Butler County Jail in Ohio. She was yet another who was stopped short by a rather inconvenient fence. Again, like Monique Armstrong, she rather strangely requested to be arrested when found. This was in spite of the deputy present repeatedly trying to convince her to go home. It seems that not only breaking into prison but requesting to be thrown into jail happens more often than you'd think. Booze or not, due to her strange behavior, she was given the misdemeanor charge of disorderly conduct. Let's hope she didn't make her situation worse with a repeat offense by attempting to drink away her new problems. Nicholas Celius of New Orleans tried to infiltrate the recreation area of a jail in 2018 for much more nefarious reasons. He was noticed but escaped only to abandon his backpack, which was holding quite an impressive stash of cocaine, marijuana, and heroin. He was captured not long after. In addition to resisting an officer, he faced charges of drug possession. And then there was the matter of an outstanding warrant from the state of Texas. While Celius had been nabbed, however, 2 others on the scene were not as easy for the cops to pick up. At the time of his arrest, these accomplices remained at large as well as unidentified. Then we have a strange case involving some alcohol in the country down under of Australia. Apparently it was here that in the summer of 2014, detainees were leaving its Berrima jail and then turning around and re-entering. While free, they would go out and have some fun drinking. However, they made sure to return each and every day before prisoners were accounted for first thing in the morning. Unfortunately for those involved, their activities were revealed when some of the men brought attention to themselves by fighting over a cellular phone. This left authorities in quite a confusing position as they tried to figure out what charges they could level on the offenders for breaking out but then breaking back in. Believe it or not, we have an even odder situation involving a planned break-in in Queensland, Australia. Here, 2 young women in their 20s went to a restricted area outside of a Brisbane correctional facility and stood suspiciously by its fence. They were discovered, and the reason they gave for their actions defies all logical reason. Apparently, the women had watched far too many episodes of a popular crime-based drama called Wentworth, and they wanted to know if a real-life prison was interesting. Though searched and found to have nothing suspicious on them, they still faced charges of unlawful entry. The event inspired a police officer to remind the public that correctional institutions are serious places and not tourist destinations. For Sarai Vlasenko, his reasons for crawling under the fence of a prison made much more sense, and as far as we can tell, got him no consequences. Then again, he was a lawyer representing a former Ukrainian prime minister who was supposedly being denied satisfactory healthcare behind bars. In addition to allegedly skimping on medical treatment, they must have also been trying to save money with limited guards. When Vlasenko arrived, there was no one there to let him in, or as others believe, they were purposefully denying him entry, with a rather peculiarly timed break. Whatever the reason, Vlasenko was less than patient. Without anyone to give him access, the lawyer resorted to a rather unlawyer-like behavior by entering via the bottom of the fence. The chief of the prison labeled this as voluntary trespassing. Vlasenko, on the other hand, claimed that to see his client, such actions were necessary. Though he may have escaped punishment in this instance, the lawyer ultimately got hit with other legal issues involving a messy divorce and alleged theft. So aside from obvious amusement, what can we take away from all of these unique situations? Well, it appears at the very least that someone attempting to bust into jail will be leveled with some type of charge for trespassing. If they're drunk or high when they do it, they can be charged with disorderly conduct, or in the unusual instance where it's applicable, driving under the influence. Doing things like attempting to break windows can get you hammered with an additional charge of criminal mischief. If breaking in to sell illicit substances, you can add drug possession to the list. And of course, failure to cooperate once identified never goes over well, and you can be accused of assault and battery on an officer or attempt to resist. If out on parole, you can expect to land right back behind the bars that you came from. Fortunately for all involved, there's nothing technically criminal about being silly or downright stupid. And not that you should need such a warning, but as these stories show, if you try to break into a jail, there are many reasons why you likely won't succeed or get very far. In the case of Nicholas Celius, for instance, the jail he attempted to breach had more than 800 cameras on hand. With such thorough surveillance, he really didn't stand a chance. Then let's not forget the formidable prison ground fencing. Its wires snagged Sylvester Giles, Patrick Rempe, and Tiffany Hurd, among others who would otherwise have successfully entered. Then there's things like locked doors, shatterproof windows, and thermal imaging technology that work against potential intruders. Of course, in addition to these things, there are many other security measures in place. And if you call the police beforehand or drive your car into the prison, you have pretty much zero chance of evading detection. Just when we thought criminals couldn't be any stupider, they'd never cease to amaze us. Do you have any fun prison break-in stories that we didn't cover that you'd like to share? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called Last 24 Hours of a Death Row Inmate. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.